Smoke. One Uncle Remus was in a meditative mood. He sat in his huge armchair with Aunt Sally's little boy on his knee, but, try as he might, the child could not lure the old Negro into the usual trail of talk. Uncle Remus was lost in silent contemplation. He had nothing to say about Brer Rabbit, Brer Possum or Brer Terrapin that night. Uncle Remus was thinking. "Yes," he said at last, as if replying to something that nobody had heard but himself. "Yes, we kin hide de fear, but why you gwine to do wid de smoke?" The little boy, accustomed to a recital of the audacious adventures and astonishing pranks of Brer Rabbit, felt that this was a poor substitute for the more palatable fare with which he was usually regaled. With a clouded face he slipped from the old Negro's hospitable knee and crept sadly off to bed. I am not sure, however, that his dejection was justified. He himself probably doubted it later on. All this happened, of course, a long, long time ago. Poor old Uncle Remus, we may suppose, has gone where all good Negroes go. And Aunt Sally's little boy, we may further suppose, grew up, after the fashion of his kind. And I cannot help thinking that, when he grew up, he reviewed and reversed the judgment that he formed that evening. In the great eventful after days, he looked back with a condescending and almost contemptuous smile on the stories of the Tar Baby, the Spotted Dog, and the other wonderful adventures of Brer Rabbit. But, as the years went by, he saw more and yet more meaning in those sensational scintillations of fireside philosophy that had once seemed so unromantic and disappointing. "You kin hide de fear," said the old man, running his black and wrinkled fingers through his white and woolly hair. "You kin hide de fear, but why you gwine to do wid de smoke?" "To the smoke. Why you gwine to do wid de smoke? You can do nothing with it, or next to nothing. From the days of the pharaohs until this very hour, busy brains have exhausted themselves on all kinds of ingenious devices for the prevention, consumption, or abolition of smoke. What you gwine to do wid de smoke? Ask the soothsayers, astrologers, and magicians of the ancient East. What you gwine to do wid de smoke? Ask the scientists, inventors, and philosophers of our own time. But it has all ended in smoke. It can end in nothing else. Smoke is the most persistent substance on the planet. Smoke is the hallmark of our humanity. It came into the world as soon as men came into the world, and it will float around our hilltops and drift along our valleys until the last man has perished from the face of the globe. As I read the stately and impressive story of creation at the beginning of my Bible, I can find no trace of smoke in the first 5 stanzas. But when I come to the 6th, and read of the making of man, I see clouds of smoke blowing across the Garden of Eden and vanishing out in the wilderness. The smoke that ascended like incense from Abel's altar was even in those early days a commonplace. It awoke no sense of novelty, it aroused no feeling of mystery, it excited neither wonder nor surprise. Since then the history of the world has been made, and some small fragment of it has been written. 100 empires have risen and fallen, 1,000 dynasties have ruled and perished. Man has gone from conquest to conquest, from miracle to miracle. He has gradually subdued all the mighty forces of earth and air and sea. He has made nature his slave, and has read, as in an open book, the riddle of the universe. He has been engaged, century after century, on a march of splendid progress. And ever at the head of his advancing column there has waved his standard. It is not the standard of a nation, it is the oriflamme of the race. It consists of filmy column of smoke. Man has never moved without it. It has attended him in all his wayward wandering by land and by sea. That column of vapor, which has seemed to be the most intangible and transitory thing on his horizon, has, in point of fact, proved the most persistent and enduring. It stands in the 20th century of our era exactly as it stood 20 centuries before that era began. It is unaltered, unmodified, unimproved in any way. The column of smoke that curled upwards from Abel's altar was just such a column of smoke as I saw from my study window this very morning. By some mechanical or evolutionary law, everything else has changed, yet that dusky pillar remains the same. North, south, east and west, in barbarism and in civilization, in frigid and in equatorial climes, in the infancy of the race and at the crack of doom, there stands your column of smoke, always and everywhere the same. Yes, there it stands, age after age, like a pillar of remembrance, like an inspiring battle flag, like a spire pointing steadfastly skywards. Others may sing of the lily so fair, or of the butterfly soaring in air, but my poor lyre I now touch to invoke. A song of thy witchery, beautiful smoke. White as the snowflake, soft as the down, dark as the rugged cliff, grey, dun or brown, cloud-like and shadowy, airy and free, surely there's nothing more lovely than the .23 that column of smoke is, I say, the natural hallmark of our humanity. 3 For, after all, man is very like his maker. It is easy to see in whose image he was made. In the days of long ago, the presence of God was announced to the pilgrim tribes by means of a pillar of cloud in the daytime and a pillar of fire in the night. And the presence of man is announced in the very self-same way. Wherever man is found, you will see the lurid glare of his camp-fire crimsoning the darkness of the night, and, in the daytime, you will see a wreathing column of smoke circling steadily upward. Man and his column of smoke are inseparable. Wherever you find the one you will find the other. 23 Anonymous. E.S. Smoke. The Bacchus Marsh Express, July 4, 1908, page 3. Our Australian Aborigines are seldom credited with any superlative degree of intelligence, yet in one respect at least they appear to be ahead of the rest of mankind. In his wild state, a recent writer says, the Australian blackfellow is a wonderfully expert manipulator of smoke signals. The marvelous dexterity with which he can send a column of smoke 2,000 or 3,000 feet into the air is only equaled by the unerring accuracy with which he can interpret the messages conveyed in the various kinds of signals sent up. To the inexperienced eye of the ordinary man, this writer points out, one column of smoke is just like another. But the blackfellow knows how to impart to it an infinite series of variations. He can make the smoke assume almost any color and any shape. He can make the column straight or spiral. He can make it regular or broken. He can make it an upright pillar or a sequence of disconnected puffs. A black boy who served me years ago on the Diamantina River, says this writer, told me one day that his people had signaled to him from 20 miles distant that 17 of them, including his father, would arrive at the place I was camped at the following day. The boy had read the message correctly, for, surely enough, at the scheduled time, the party appeared. Here, on my desk, lies Fenimore Cooper's Pathfinder. The frontispiece, the only picture in the volume, depicts the scene in which, lost in the endless woods, Arrowhead, his wife, and their 2 white companions catch sight of the column of smoke. It is Mabel who sees it first. "See," she exclaims, calling excitedly to her uncle, "an old sea captain, yonder is smoke curling over the tops of the trees. Can it come from a house?" Aye, replies the captain, "there's a look of humanity in that smoke which is worth 1,000 trees." The sight of the smoke has affected him like the sudden appearance of a sail at sea. But it is the Indian who is best worth watching. For fully a minute Arrowhead stands, slightly raised on tiptoe, with distended nostrils, like the buck that scents a taint in the air, and with a gaze as riveted as that of the trained pointer while he waits his master's aim. His countenance is calm, and his quick, dark, eagle eye moves over the leafy panorama, as if to take in at a glance every circumstance that might enlighten his mind. "There must be Indians there," hazards the seaman. "No wigwam there," replies the red man confidently, "no wigwam there, too much tree, paleface fire." "But, surely," exclaims Mabel, "he cannot know that." "See," cries the Indian, reading her doubts, "wet wood, much wet, much smoke, much water, black smoke, too much water, Indian too cunning to make fire with water, paleface too much book, burn anything, paleface read much and know little." 24. So essentially human a thing is a column of smoke. Wherever you behold the pillar of cloud in the daytime, or the pillar of fire in the night, you read the announcement of the presence of man. And a trained eye like the eye of Arrowhead can tell you the color and the kind of man whose presence you are approaching. 24 Cooper, James Fenimore. The Pathfinder, or, The Inland Sea, Volume 1. London, Richard Bentley, 1840, page 9-13. 4. It is a pity that Arrowhead and Uncle Remus cannot meet and chat this matter over. For I really think that this sharp-eyed redskin whom we have met among the backwoods of Canada has given us a clue to the problem that was first suggested to us by the old Negro on the cotton plantations farther south. "You can hide de fear," says Uncle Remus, "but why you want to do wid de smoke?" "Let the paleface take care how he makes his fire," replies Arrowhead. "Much water, black smoke, no water, little smoke," Arrowhead has spoken. It is, then, a problem of proportion. In lighting my fire or illuminating my home, I must aim at a maximum of flame and a minimum of smoke. The history of the evolution of illumination, torch, candle, lamp, gas, electricity, radium, points steadily in this direction. It is clear that men have been struggling for centuries to increase the proportion of light so as to minimize the proportion of smoke. For, although man has borne his column of smoke with him in all his age-long gypsyings, he has done it under protest. He does not love the smoke. He simply endures it. He carries it as Sinbad the sailor carried the Old Man of the Sea, because he cannot shake it off. As Arrowhead the Indian implies, the art of making a fire is the art of getting a maximum of light and heat with a minimum of smoke. That is what Paul meant when he urged the Ephesians to be angry, but, in their anger, not to sin. 25 As much flame as you like, he says, but no smoke, no smoke. The worst neighbor I ever had was a man who took a strange delight in piling up a huge heap of rubbish, setting fire to it, and leaving it to smoke and smolder. The smell of his bonfire was on everything in the house, but it was the smell of the smoke, not the smell of the flame. If the great pyre had gone up with a roar and a hiss and a crackle, its long tongues of red flame leaping fiercely skywards, nobody could have objected.
One step more,
it would have been
just
all
now
fire
quoted
and
Paul.
little smoke.
But the Bible draws
it
it to its climax,
the abominable
thing
thing smoldered.
Not
It
of
was
Paul,
all
but
smoke
of John.
and no flame. And
Now,
on the subject
I have
of
the
light,
most excellent
John is our
medical
greatest
authority
authority
for
and
stating
final
that,
court of
whilst
appeal.
every other shred and
There
fibre
is
of
more
my
about light in
constitution
his
is
writings
liable
than in
to
all
at
the
least
rest of the
1,000
New
ailments
Testament
and
put
diseases.
together.
My temper,
And all that he has to
enough,
say is
is
summed
summed
up in
only
such
to two.
sentences as these.
If I
am
develop
the
a
light of the
malady
world,
in that exquisitely
26
delicate and
25
extremely
EPH,
sensitive
or
organ,
26.
I shall immediately become
God
either
is
a
light,
blazer
and
or
in
a
him is no
smolder.
darkness at all.
And those who have had
the secret
experience
of
of both
illumination
classes
lies.
of patients
We have
assure
seen
me
in
that,
securing
of
a
the two,
maximum of
the
radiance
blazer is
and a
least to
minimum
be
of
dreaded.
smoke.
But here we bring the radiance to perfection and eliminate the smoke altogether. No darkness at all. Perhaps the conception will prove more arresting if I provide the luminous figure with a gloomy background. Here, then, is the dying confession of Voltaire, confided to the ear of his physician. "My friend," cried the sick man, "you are the only one who has given me good advice. Had I but followed it, I should not have been in the horrible position in which I now am. I have listened to flattery, and have intoxicated myself with the incense that turned my head. I have swallowed nothing but smoke." And so, in utter wretchedness, he died. All light, no smoke, that is the ideal of the ages. All smoke, no light, that is confusion worse confounded. "I have swallowed nothing but smoke," cries Voltaire, as he turns his face to the wall. "I shuddered when I heard him say it," adds the physician, in placing the words upon record. 28. So do I, and, shuddering, turn to him who is light, perfect light, the kindly light, the light in which there is no darkness at all. 26 John chapter 8 verse 12, 9-5. 27 1 John chapter 1 verse 5. 28 Theodore Tronchin, 1709–1781, is the physician who recorded this extraordinary narrative on June 20, 1778. It was afterwards published in French in Félix Bungenet's Voltaire et son Temps. Paris, Joel Cherbuliez, 1851, Volume 2, page 238–241, in English as Voltaire and His Times. Edinburgh, Thomas Constable and Company, page 466–469. Borum, however, appears to be quoting a paraphrase.